Today we're getting into one of the most amazing transformation stories in all of European history.
Oh, absolutely.
We're talking about the Magyars. This is a group of people who started out as, well, nomadic horsemen from the Asian steppes.
Right, from way out east.
And somehow they end up founding a major European kingdom that's still here today. Hungary.
It's a wild story of adapting or dying, really. We're going to trace their whole journey, where they came from, their unique way of fighting that terrified people.
And the one huge battle that changed everything for them.
Exactly. And then how they managed to build a real, permanent society from the ashes of their old way of life.
Okay, so let's start with that journey, because this wasn't a quick trip. We're talking centuries of movement.
We are. Originally, they were from Central Asia, somewhere around the Ural Mountains.
And their entire life, their whole culture, revolved around the horse.
It was everything. Their transportation, their weapon, their identity. They were what we call a nomadic people.
Linguistically, they're part of the Ugric group, which is important because it makes them different from a lot of their neighbors.
It really does. Their early life was all about survival hunting, fishing, gathering food. You had to be tough, and you had to be able to adapt to, well, to anything.
And just think about the distance. They moved in these big tribal groups, covering thousands of miles.
Thousands, over really rugged land.
And what's incredible is that through all of that, they kept their language. The language that eventually became modern Hungarian.
Which tells you a lot about how strong their culture was, that internal connection.
So to manage a migration like that, you'd need some serious organization.
You would. Their whole society was built around 7 major tribes. And they had to cooperate. It wasn't really a choice.
It was about survival.
Exactly. Mutual protection. Each tribe had its own powerful chieftain, a leader.
But they didn't just operate alone. These chieftains would meet up.
They did. They'd form a council to decide on the big stuff, like where to go next or how to deal with threats they met along the way. It was a very strict system.
And that cooperation eventually became something more formal.
It became a confederation, basically a military alliance. The 7 tribes joined forces to boost their strength. This was the engine that made them so powerful when they finally arrived in Europe.
And powerful is almost an understatement. Their warriors were legendary.
They really were. They were masters of what's called light cavalry. Think soldiers on fast horses, not heavy knights in clunky armor.
Their whole military style was about speed and mobility.
Right. And they had the tech to back it up. Their main weapon was the short composite bow.
Okay, so what makes a composite bow different?
Well, it wasn't just a bent piece of wood. It was made from layers of wood, animal horn, and sinew all glued together. It was smaller, so you could use it on a horse, but it packed a huge punch.
So you could shoot really accurately, even while riding at full gallop.
Precisely. And their horses were a special breed, too small, incredibly fast, and they could run for a long, long time without getting tired.
So a warrior would have the bow, a saber for close fighting,
a shield, and tons of arrows and quivers. Everything was designed to be lightweight and effective.
and they had this one signature tactic that just baffled their enemies.
Ah, yes, the feigned retreat. Some people call it the Parthian shot, but the Magyars perfected it.
Explain that, because it sounds like the opposite of what you do in a battle.
It's pure psychological warfare. They'd charge at an enemy, then suddenly turn and pretend to run away.
So the enemy thinks they're winning and gives chase.
Exactly. And the heavy European cavalry would break formation to run them down. But as the Magyars were galloping away, they'd turn around in their saddles and just fire a storm of arrows backward into the pursuing army.
Wow. So the hunters become the hunted.
It made them almost impossible to beat on an open field.
And that military machine carried them right into their new home. Around the end of the 9th century, they arrived in the Carpathian Basin.
And this place was perfect for them. It wasn't an accident they stopped there. Geographically, it's a natural fortress.
Surrounded by the Carpathian Mountains.
Like a giant wall. And inside, the land was flat, great plains, perfect for grazing their huge herds of horses and cattle.
Plus, it had big rivers like the Danube and the Titsa, so it's fertile land. And there weren't many people already living there.
So they could take control pretty easily. This is where they start to shift, just a little, from pure nomads to settlers.
And once they had this secure base, they started raiding.
Oh yeah, all across Western Europe, Germany, France, Italy, the goal was loot. Gold, silver, valuable goods.
And their speed was the key. They could ride in, cause chaos, grab what they wanted, and be gone before a local army could even get organized.
And all that wealth flowing back made the chieftains back home even more powerful.
But a system like that, based on raiding, can't last forever. Eventually, people fight back.
And that's exactly what happened. The whole era came to a sudden, violent end in 955 at the Battle of Lechfeld.
This is maybe the single most important moment in their history.
Without a doubt, a huge German army led by a king named Otto the Great decided to put a stop to it.
And this was the one time their greatest strength, their speed, became their biggest weakness.
Otto was smart. He chose the battlefield carefully near a river. He used heavy German cavalry, slower but much better armored.
And he trapped them.
He did. They were pinned against the river. There was no room for them to do their famous feigned retreat, no space to run.
So their main tactic was useless.
Completely useless. It was a crushing defeat, a disaster for them.
And that loss wasn't just about losing soldiers. It was like an identity crisis.
It was. They were forced to realize that their whole way of life, being these feared raiders, just wasn't going to work anymore against the big organized kingdoms of Europe. They limped back home, knowing something had to change, fundamentally.
So the message was basically, we can't conquer Europe.
So we have to join it, yeah. And that meant a huge cultural shift. They had to stop wandering and start farming.
That's a massive change.
It is. They had to give up their portable tents, their yurts, and build permanent villages. They had to learn how to grow crops like wheat and barley.
They needed stability. So the leaders started setting up clear borders, creating laws.
But the biggest step, the most important one for being accepted in Europe, was adopting Christianity.
That must have been a huge risk, though. Weren't the old tribal leaders and their beliefs still really powerful?
A massive risk. But they knew it was the only way to survive. Politically, becoming Christian meant they could make alliances with their powerful neighbors.
So they wouldn't be seen as outsiders anymore.
Exactly. And internally, it gave all the tribes one single belief system, one set of laws under one god, and eventually one king. It plugged them into the rest of Western civilization.
And you could see this change on the ground, where they started building churches and monasteries.
All over the place. And these became centers for learning and administration, not just for worship.
Which brings us to the guy who really sealed the deal, Stephen I.
The true founder of the Hungarian state. Around the year 1000, he was crowned the first king of Hungary.
And he got his crown from the Pope in Rome, which was a huge deal.
It was a massive political statement. It meant Western Europe officially recognized them as a legitimate Christian kingdom.
And Stephen's first job was to centralize power.
Right. He had to break the power of the old chieftains who still wanted to live the old way. He was pretty ruthless about it.
He was a great administrator, too. He divided the country up into counties.
Which made it way easier to govern, enforce his laws, and most importantly, collect taxes to pay for everything. He laid the foundation for the entire state.
And with this new state came a new social structure, a lot like the feudal system in the rest of Europe.
Yep. You have the king at the top. Below him, nobles who owned land and had to provide soldiers for the army.
And then the common people, farmers, craftsmen.
Many of whom worked on the nobles' land in exchange for protection. And the church became a huge landowner, too. Very powerful.
With all this stability, their economy must have really taken off.
It did. Agriculture became the backbone. They grew wheat, barley, and grapes for wine, but they still kept their old skills. Cattle ranching was huge. They exported a lot of meat and hides.
And their location, smack in the middle of Europe, had to be a huge advantage for trade.
The perfect crossroads. They were the bridge between Northern Europe and the Byzantine Empire in the southeast.
So goods are flowing up and down the Danube River.
Salt, fur, metals, you name it. Big markets started growing in the towns, and they began using their own coins. It was a proper, settled economy.
It's just such a profound legacy. The Magyars went from being the terror of Europe to creating a kingdom that acted as a buffer between East and West for centuries.
And the most amazing part might be their language. It survived, totally unique, surrounded by Slavic and Germanic languages, a little piece of their ancient roots right in the heart of Europe.
Modern Hungary comes directly from those 7 tribes who made that incredible journey.
Their ability to just completely change their identity when they realized their old one wasn't working, that's the ultimate lesson in adaptation.
It really shows that a culture isn't just something that's set in stone. It's a tool for survival.
Which leaves you with a final thought to consider. If the Magyars had actually won the Battle of Lechfeld, do you think they ever would have founded a lasting kingdom? Or was that terrible defeat the necessary push they needed to succeed in the long run?
Something to think about. Good luck with your studies.